Good morning. Just recently I've been reading 1 Peter. Now I've read it many times before, I have to say, but this time I have found it the most difficult, most challenging book that I can think of. I've read for a long time. The words are quite easy, unlike, say, Revelation, which is just sometimes a complete mystery. It's quite straightforward in that sense. There are strange verses which I don't understand, like 1 Peter 4:6, but generally speaking, it is quite straightforward, but it is so challenging. And I have found it really difficult. And I've got a lot to learn, and I realise how far short of what God expects of me I am. But nevertheless, there's a lot to learn there, and there's a lot to challenge, and there's a lot to get up and go with. But the whole thing, if you like, is built, I believe, on the epistle is founded, if you like, on what 1 Peter 2, and 1 Peter 2 verse 4 in particular, if I may just read it. You are coming to Christ, who is the living cornerstone of God's temple. He was rejected by people, but he was chosen by God for great honour. And you are living stones that God is building into his spiritual temple. The word cornerstone occurs very often in both the Old and the New Testament. But what is a cornerstone? We think we might know, but let me tell you, let's just fill it in. Basically, a cornerstone was used, if you like, in important buildings in the past. In ancient times, if you like, I guess most buildings were just put together ad hoc with mud and whatnot else. Wattle and daub, as we used to call it. But important buildings would have been stone, and they would have had a cornerstone. The cornerstone is set in a particular way, in a particular orientation, at a particular level, and in a particular position. And this defines the building that is to be built upon it. That cornerstone is the reference point from which the rest of the building is built. And everything goes back to that cornerstone. In fact, it was such an important thing that once it was laid, carefully laid, in accordance, if you like, with what was required in terms of the gods and all the rest of it, sacrifices were often made on it. Blood spilt on it quite often. It was that important. It was really the most important thing. We don't use cornerstones so much these days, certainly not in that way, because most buildings aren't stone and we have modern techniques, lasers and all the rest of it to do things. But we still use cornerstones. In one sense, they are still used as an important part of the building. Very often they're used with inscriptions on, or the date of the building, and so on and so forth. And very often they're hollowed out, and if you like, a time capsule is put inside. And that defines the original purpose of the building and how important that building was. So that cornerstone still, these days, has an important role to play, but not in the same way as in the past. But to me, the point is, the cornerstone was the reference point, and if you like, it was a point of sacrifice. Jesus Christ is our cornerstone. Everything we do has to refer back to him. If I may read Ephesians 2:20. Together we are his house, built on the foundation of the apostles and the prophets. And the cornerstone is Christ Jesus himself. We are carefully joined together in him, becoming a holy temple for the Lord. Through him, you Gentiles are also being made part of this dwelling where God lives by his Spirit. Jesus Christ is our cornerstone. He is our reference point in all we do, all we think, all we are. And I'll leave you with that thought this morning. Jesus Christ, our cornerstone. There is no greater, more important reference point than Jesus Christ himself. Thank you.